You are signing away the only thing that has ever belonged to you. And you are smiling while you do it. Frederica kept her eyes on the document. She had read it 4 times. She knew every word, every number, every risk written between those lines. She knew exactly what this man expected her to do. She also knew something he did not. On the 3rd page of that document, buried inside the kind of legal language most people never finish reading, there was one clause. Just one. And that clause changed everything about the position she was standing in. Count von Reisbach had not found it. Frederica had. He stood there believing this was already settled. He had the crown's backing. He had the law on his side. He had every reason to feel certain. He had not counted on her. Now she had a choice to make. Use what she had found right now, in this room, in front of him. Or keep it quiet. Save it. Wait for the moment when it would matter most. Which did she choose? And what was in that clause that made a powerful count go completely silent? This story is a work of fiction set against a real historical period. The characters, names, events, and conversations in this episode are entirely created for storytelling purposes and do not represent any real person, living or deceased. Historical details about Bavarian law, social customs, and the Regency era have been included for educational value and may be simplified for the purpose of this narrative. This channel is created for entertainment and education. Viewer discretion is advised for younger audiences due to themes of legal conflict and social pressure. To understand what Frederica was holding in that room, you need to go back 12 weeks. It was a quiet Tuesday morning when Herr Brandauer arrived at Schloss Haller. He was the family solicitor. He had managed the estate's legal affairs for over 20 years. He was not a man who made visits without a reason. He came through the servants' corridor, not the front entrance. That small detail told Frederica everything before he had said a single word. Whatever he was carrying, he did not want the Baroness to know about it. She received him in the records room. He placed a document on the table and sat down. He did not look comfortable. "There is a debt," he said. 8,000 thaler, owed to the Bavarian crown. It comes from a land survey that was conducted under your grandfather's instruction 7 years ago. The survey was wrong. The crown has chosen now to enforce the claim. 8,000 thaler. In 1810 Bavaria, that was not a small number. It was the kind of figure that changed futures. Brandauer explained the crown's proposal. Because there was no male heir to the estate, and because the debt was significant, the law allowed for a legal instrument called a Vormundschaft. In plain English, that is a guardianship deed. Under this arrangement, a male peer of sufficient rank could take over the full management of the estate. He would absorb the debt. In exchange, he would control everything: the land, the income, the decisions. The Vormundschaft was a real instrument in 19th century Bavarian law. It was originally created to protect widows and orphans who could not manage their own affairs. In practice, it was frequently used to transfer control of profitable estates away from women who simply had no male relative to protect them. It was not considered cruel at the time. It was simply how the law worked. In the hierarchy of the Bavarian Adel, that is the landed nobility, a count held the rank of Graf. That placed him well above a woman of Frederica's standing in any legal dispute. His rank alone meant the court's sympathy would begin with him, not with her. Frederica held the title of Gutscherin, Lady of the Estate. In a drawing room, that title carried respect. In a legal chamber in Munich, it carried considerably less. Count Ludwig von Reisbach had already agreed to take on the debt. The paperwork was ready. All that was needed was her signature. Brandauer pushed the document closer. Frederica did not pick it up. She asked one question. "Is there anything in this document that he has not read?" Brandauer paused. He looked at her. He said he did not know. She asked him to leave the room and give her 1 hour alone with it. He did. And in that 1 hour, on the 3rd page, in the middle of a block of dry legal language that most people would never have finished reading, Frederica found exactly what she was looking for. She had known about this debt for 4 months. She had told no one. Not the Baroness. Not the steward. Not a single person in that house. Now she understood why she had waited. A week after Brandauer's visit, Frederica sent a letter to Count von Reisbach. Formal, correct, written exactly as the rules of correspondence required. She requested a meeting at Schloss Haller to discuss the terms of the arrangement. He arrived on a grey Thursday morning. She had chosen the meeting room with care. It was the coldest room in the house. She had also chosen the chairs. His sat 2 inches lower than hers. Small things. They mattered. Von Reisbach wasted no time. "You understand the terms are favorable," he said, before she had spoken a single word. "The crown debt disappears. The estate continues. You keep your title. Everything carries on as before, only with proper management behind it." Proper management. He said it easily, as though it were a simple fact and not a decision he had already made for her. Notice what von Reisbach does in his very first sentence. He does not ask how she is. He does not ask if she has questions. He walks into the room and tells her what the outcome is going to be. This is a pattern worth knowing. When someone enters a conversation already holding the conclusion, they are not there to discuss anything. They are there to confirm what they have already decided. That is not confidence. That is control dressed up as helpfulness. Frederica let him finish. She did not interrupt. She did not agree. She looked at him steadily and said, "You have read the instrument 3 times. I have read it 4. You missed a clause." The room went quiet. He did not ask which clause. He did not say, "Show me." He sat back in his chair and his expression shifted. He was not reconsidering his behavior. He was recalculating his position. This is the second pattern to watch. When Frederica corrects him, von Reisbach's first response is not curiosity. He does not ask what he missed. He starts working out what to do about the fact that she found it. People who respond to new information by immediately thinking about how to recover their advantage, rather than genuinely listening, are telling you something important about how they operate. The clause was this. Under the terms of the Vormundschaft instrument, the guardian's authority could be legally suspended for 3 years if the title holder entered into a recognized union with a peer of equal or greater standing. The suspension would apply independently of the crown debt. In plain terms, if Frederica married someone else, anyone else of suitable rank, Count von Reisbach's claim over the estate would be void. She had no intention of marrying anyone, but he did not know that. Popular dramas like Bridgerton show the marriage market as something glamorous. Ballrooms, flowers, stolen glances. The historical reality in 1810 Bavaria was far less romantic. Marriage among the landed gentry was a legal transaction before it was anything else. It was used to settle debts, transfer property, and secure alliances. A woman who understood the marriage laws well enough to use them as a legal shield was not a romantic heroine. She was considered, by most of polite society, rather alarming. Von Reisbach left without signing. He said he would return once he had considered the matter further. Frederica watched his carriage leave from an upstairs window. She was not relieved. She was not satisfied. She was watching him, because she had already decided that what he did next, when he thought the conversation was over, would tell her far more about him than anything he had said in that room. He came back, but not the way Frederica had expected. 3 days after the meeting, von Reisbach arrived at Schloss Haller without sending a card ahead. He did not ask for Frederica. He asked for the steward. He was shown to the estate's outer office, and for the next 2 hours, he sat at the workbench going through the farm ledgers, page by page, every entry, every number. He came back the following Tuesday. He walked the south field. On his own. In the fog. No one had asked him to. The Tuesday after that, he spent an hour at the boundary wall with the elderly gatekeeper, asking about the history of the eastern border and how the land drainage had been managed over the years. He said nothing to Frederica. He made no announcements. He sent no letters. He simply did the work. Frederica watched all of this from an upstairs window. She stood back from the glass so he would not see her looking. She watched him crouch down at the edge of the south field to examine the soil. She watched him stand at the boundary wall for a long time, listening to the gatekeeper, asking questions she could not hear. She said nothing to anyone. In 1810 Bavarian society, a man of Count von Riesbausch's rank was not expected to do this kind of work. Estate management was handled by stewards and solicitors. A Graf who chose to walk the fields himself, read the ledgers himself and speak directly to the workers was behaving in a way that most of his peers would have considered unnecessary, even slightly undignified. What he was doing was not normal for his position. He was choosing to understand something before he touched it. 3 weeks passed. On a cold evening in December, Frederica was moving through the corridor outside the Baroness's music room when von Reisbach came from the opposite direction. It was not planned. There was no arrangement. The sound of a pianoforte played steadily behind the closed door. No one else was in the corridor. He stopped. She stopped. He spoke first. "I think you showed me that clause to make me leave. Not because you planned to use it." She did not answer that. "I am not here to take your house from you, Frederica." It was the first time he had used her name. Not her title. Not Fräulein von Haller. Her name. She looked at him. Fully. Directly. Not the careful, measured glance she had been allowing herself since the first meeting. She looked at him properly. The way you look at someone when you are deciding something real. "Then what are you here for?" "I do not know yet. But I would like to find out. With your permission." The pianoforte continued in the next room. Outside, snow had begun to fall on the valley. The easiest thing, the safest thing, was to say nothing, to step back, to hold the legal clause like a shield and send him on his way. She had already found her own solution to the crown debt. She did not need him. Not legally. Not financially. Not in any way that could be written into a document. She said, "You may call again on Thursday. At 7. Use the front entrance." 6 words. That was the sacrifice. Not money. Not position. Not some grand gesture that the whole of Bavaria would hear about. Just 6 words that quietly took down the one wall she had built most carefully. She had given him permission. And for a woman who had spent 4 months handling everything alone, in silence, behind closed doors, that was the most costly thing she had ever done. In February of 1811, the crown debt was settled. Not through the Vormundschaft. Not through any marriage. Not through von Reisbach. Frederica had found the answer in her grandfather's original survey, the same survey that had created the debt in the first place. Inside it, she had identified a parcel of land on the estate's northern edge that had been measured incorrectly. The crown surveyors had overcounted it by nearly a quarter. That land had, by rights, always belonged to the crown. It had simply never been returned. Frederica wrote to the crown's solicitor directly. She offered the land back. She asked for nothing in return except the cancellation of the outstanding debt. The crown accepted within the month. 8,000 thaler. Gone. Settled by a piece of land and a letter she wrote herself, at her own desk, without telling a single person until it was done. The Vormundschaft instrument was never signed. Count von Riesbausch's claim was never enforced. The estate remained exactly as it was, hers, in name and in fact. Von Reisbach knew. Brandauer had told him. When Frederica saw von Reisbach the following Thursday, he said nothing about it. He asked instead about the drainage problem in the south field that the gatekeeper had mentioned, and whether the steward had found a workable solution. That was all. He still came every Thursday. At 7. Through the front entrance. He had been doing so since December. The Baroness had begun making pointed remarks at supper about propriety, about calling cards and correct timing, about what the rest of Bavaria's society would think if this continued without a formal arrangement in place. Frederica listened to every word and said nothing. Last Thursday, she did not wear grey. She had worn grey to every one of those meetings. Every single one. Grey communicated nothing, she had always told herself. It gave nothing away. It was the safest color for a woman who had decided to give nothing away. Last Thursday she wore amber. The Baroness had said, quite firmly, that it was not appropriate for an unmarried woman of her position. Frederica had listened. She had worn it anyway. Von Reisbach had not said a word about it, but he had noticed. She had seen him notice. Now there is one more thing you need to know before this story continues next week. 3 days ago, a letter arrived at Schloss Haller. It was addressed to von Reisbach, care of the estate. Someone had sent it here deliberately, knowing he came on Thursdays. The Baroness found it first. She has not given it to Frederica. She has not given it to von Reisbach. She has said nothing to either of them. But she has read it. Who sent that letter? Why was it addressed to a count at a woman's estate rather than to his own household? And what does the Baroness know that she is choosing, very carefully, not to say? Come back next week, because what is written in that letter will change everything you think you understand about why von Reisbach came to Schloss Haller in the first place. Before this episode ends, let us be honest about what this story was really about. It was not about a debt. It was not about a legal document or a clever clause or a crown surveyor who made a mistake 7 years ago. It was about a woman who had built walls around herself so well that even the people living in the same house could not see past them. And it was about the moment she chose, quietly and deliberately, to take one of those walls down. Frederica did not need saving. She solved her own problem. She found the answer in her grandfather's own papers. She wrote the letter. She negotiated the settlement. She did all of it without asking a single person for help. And then, in a cold corridor with a pianoforte playing in the next room, she said 6 words that cost her more than any of it. You may call again on Thursday. That was the sacrifice. Not money. Not land. The decision to stop managing everything alone and allow one person to come a little closer. The strongest people are not the ones who need nobody. They are the ones who know when they have found someone worth the risk, and have the courage to open the door. Being capable is not the same as being closed, and being careful is not the same as being safe. That is what Frederica learned in the winter of 1810, and that is what this story leaves with you today. You do not have to carry everything alone to prove that you are strong. Real strength is knowing who has earned the right to stand beside you, and then choosing to let them. If this story stayed with you, press subscribe so you do not miss what happens next week. That letter the Baroness is hiding, it was not meant for her eyes. And what is written inside it will make you question everything about how this story began. New episodes every week. Drop a comment below. Do you think Frederica made the right choice? Would you have opened that door? I created this story because we often forget that behind the formal letters, the calling cards and the carefully chosen words of 1810 Bavaria, they were real women making impossible decisions completely alone. This narrative was inspired by the real legal instruments of early 19th century German civil law, particularly the Vormundschaft, a guardianship system that actually existed and was used far more often than history books acknowledge. During this era, a woman could hold a title, manage an estate and run an entire household with quiet competence, and still have a court of law hand everything she had built to a man she barely knew, simply because the law said he had the right rank to take it. I wanted to explore Frederica not as a woman waiting to be rescued, but as someone who already had the answer. She found the clause. She negotiated the settlement. She solved every practical problem placed in front of her. The only thing she could not solve with paperwork was the question of whether to stop carrying everything alone. That is what stayed with me when I wrote this. Not the legal drama, not the debt or the document or the count with his measured words, but the moment in that corridor when a woman who had protected herself for years said 6 quiet words and chose to let one person in. It makes me wonder, how many of us are doing the same thing right now? Solving every problem, managing every crisis, keeping every wall perfectly in place, and calling it strength when really, part of it is fear. This story is a tribute to the people in history who never made the grand gesture, who never stood on a balcony or signed a famous treaty or had their name written into any official record, who simply, in one private moment, decided to trust and change the course of everything because of it. True strength is not found in how much you can carry alone. It is found in knowing when to put some of it down.